you just did a show in New York last Saturday, which was great, sold out, which is fun. You talked about on the show, and I've heard you talk about it before, your invisibility cloak as an Asian man, where like if I wanted to be anonymous or hidden, you felt that you could do it.
Oh yeah, just don't stick your face into someone else's face, and you
could just walk by. Yeah. Do you? I'm curious at how that, or one, you could love you to like unpack that further, but also it's tied to, or can it be? Is it tied to this concept of otherness that I feel like the Asian American community lives with, where you're not, and you got it a bit. I think we ran for mayor, where you're not really a New Yorker, even though you've been here for
25 years.
Yeah. And anything you did that wasn't, I don't know, like traditional New Yorker. You said your favorite subway station was Times Square, which is, by the way, where you live. And if you listen to that full quote, you're like, yeah, it's my favorite one because it's the one I take all the time. Like, oh, he's a tourist. You had political cartoons that were, in my opinion, offensive, and little backlash from those who usually call out those sort of things as offensive. Does that invisibility cloak you're talking about play into the otherness of the Asian American community? Am I overthinking that? I don't know what you think.
Well, one of the things that Jay and I talked about, which I found hysterical, where he said on the podcast, he was like, people just don't give a shit about the internal lives of Asian Americans, which I laughed at because I thought, well, it's pretty true. And then he talked about the tension of writing a book around something that people don't give a shit about. Right. So I think that's the way that you adapt over time. And I would say that there's like a spectrum of racism where it's like, that anti-Black racism is much more serious and destructive. And so then if you complain about racism towards like another group, then everyone's like, that's part of it's part of Jay's point. Mm-hmm. And so certainly that otherness, and let me say that I feel very American. I got into some trouble because, I wrote something that frankly assumed Asian Americans were Americans. And I got into trouble with people who somehow imagined that I was calling our Americanness into question when I was really assuming it.
Yeah.
I love this country. I mean, my parents immigrated here, and I think, at the same time, like I don't have any illusions about the fact that that people perceive who I am, at least partially, as an Asian guy. And, there are certain things that come with that. And, as like an adult, like there are some things that I took for granted, including this invisibility cloak I was joking about. But it turns out that I was completely wrong about the invisibility cloak, because now when I walk the streets of New York or any place else, people are like, Yang,
you're no longer invisible.
Yeah, where's my $1,000? And I'm like, oh, and like, no, that's different, but I'd say it's positive different. And I'm trying to make the most of this. I do want to activate Asian Americans that are right now disengaged in some of these issues. And I'm really happy to say that my campaign did that. Like I met a lot of people from different communities who said, look, you made me interested in politics. In politics, you made me care. And I think that's a good thing. I think that assuming that degree of involvement is like a sign of confidence and maturation, which I love. Though I will also say that if someone decides that politics is just anxiety producing and depressing and they want to ignore it for an extended period of time, I'm with you there too. It's like, don't worry about it. It's like because of a lot of the things, like frankly, the media drumbeat, which we're going to talk about the recent article about Kamala, but like the media is definitely race obsessed in a way that I certainly think most Asian Americans are not. Like most Asian Americans, in my experience, are just trying to make good things happen for themselves and their family. And if there are media products that they want to consume that have a lot of Asian faces, there are a lot of those products that are being made in people's native countries. Like a lot of the Koreans I know just watch Korean dramas and like perfectly happy. That said, also, I am of that group of people that loves it when creators and artists of different communities like are trying to make that happen, in part because it's so hard. So like I do support Asian American writers and artists and the rest of it, because I feel the resistance.
Yeah. That's a good segue into this last question I asked you. So I think it's not, I think by that we've looked at some numbers, so we could pull them up if we want to dive in further. But your point that most Asian Americans you think are not race obsessed. I think most Americans are not race obsessed, and I know that people have told me that's or the classic white guy saying I don't see racism is a place of privilege, and I agree with that. But you could also be true the other extent that it's still not everybody thinking racism all the time or seeing race and only race. But my question is, at least from my own personal experience as a straight white guy, my whole thing is I'm trying to be an ally, trying not to be an asshole like on most days. And my question is, what should non-Asians know about being Asian or simply, how could they not, someone like me, how can I not be a dick? Or is there something, and I've never asked you this before, but is there something that you wish folks of other races or maybe just white people knew about being Asian that isn't talked about or you've never said or others haven't said?
Well, you and I have worked together for years, so clearly.
I've got a lot of this through osmosis, I think, and I've lived the community in many ways.
I think that the main thing that most Asian Americans would want would just to be regarded as three-dimensional human beings with thoughts, feelings, hopes, ambitions, sense of humor, et cetera, and not to be reduced to any trait, including race. I think that's what most people want.
Yeah. And my favorite quote from you on the presidential, when someone had said, well, you are repurposing and promoting a stereotype when you use a math slogan or things like that. And you said, maybe, but it's also not the Asian American stereotype is standing next to Joe Biden
and running for president,
right?
Yeah, like the entire thing is like you're reinforcing Asian stereotypes. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm running for president. It's like the least Asian thing you can do. So shut the fuck up is what I'd wanted to say. But of course, you can't say that stuff when you're running for office. You have to be like, oh, I understand. People can take a joke. But internally, I was like, look a fucking round you. It's like, what am I doing here? Yeah. And I will say too that like this is one of the things that irritated the shit out of me. It's like you find like 7 irritating Asian Americans with like organizations that barely exist and be like, oh look, we found these Asian Americans to say like Andrew Yang doesn't speak for us. It's like, 1, I would never pretend to speak for everyone in the community, but 2, it's like, do something. You know what I mean? But then the fact that the media would like to beat that. You know why? Because it serves the media's narrative. And you know who it doesn't serve? Like everyone else, like the American public,
all of us.
Like people who want good things to happen, Asian American, like that shit does not help. But like that, there's like this, it's like a device, it's something. It's happening to Jay too, by the way. And so like at the end of my conversation with Jay, we had a moment about that. Yeah, so I'll drop that.
We live this world where a lot of the people are pretending to or claiming to be championing progress are usually the blockade to that progress.
Well, they have just a very, very narrow definition, and it's around social media bullshit and things that don't matter to the vast majority of people. And so then you just like get caught up in that, and then that's the coin of the realm. It's one of the diseases of this time.
Oh, it's what we live every day, brother. That's why look, and we appreciate all of you for listening. Because it's a place where you can actually have a conversation on this that isn't. It's gray. It's not black and white. Most things are.
Maybe that could be Jay's book title instead of The Loneliest Americans. Not black or white.